So some of you, many of you, all of you have had some kind of coaching in the past. So, you know, there's probably a lot of wisdom and ideas from our group today about what has worked and what isn't working. I'm just going to kind of give you my take on what can make you as an HR professional a more effective candidate or prospect for a job in today's market, really in any market, but particularly in today's market. So I guess, yeah, you can go to the next slide. So, so our agenda this morning, we have about an hour. Welcoming. We're going to talk about a couple different things: background, experience, and education. Talk a little bit about resumes, career goals and plans, entrepreneurship, and then stress management. So, so that's the agenda for this morning. Just to give a little bit of background on myself, is that I've had, prior to my starting my business 25 years ago, I worked in corporate America. I have a business degree, and I worked for like mostly bigger companies: Cigna, Prudential, GE Capital. I did work for a couple small companies, about half HR, half operations. And then I started the business 25 years ago in 1995. And we kind of evolved and morphed into a business that places HR people, about half contract, half direct hire. I would say like my core strengths are strategy, sales and marketing. But I've also evolved into a pretty decent recruiter over the years as well. But that was never kind of my favorite part of HR, just to be honest. We're amongst friends. But I kept getting pulled back into it. So every time I took a generalist job, they said, well, yeah, but recruiting's going to be, you know, whatever, 30, 40. It usually became more than that. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite. My favorite was organizational development, training, team building, you know, culture. Those were the kinds of things that I was really interested in terms of HR. So, and then coaching, before I talk about the logistics, the reason that I've added coaching is I realized that over the years, I've kind of always been doing coaching with either candidates or, you know, HR leaders internally. They tend to be a good kind of sounding board, somebody that people can trust to talk to about their situations and know that I'm not gonna, because, you know, confidentiality is really important, obviously, in the career search process. So, you know, you need to be able to trust people. And so I feel like I've earned some of that trust over the years. And so I think I've had some pretty transparent and authentic conversations and honest conversations with people. So I guess when COVID hit, and I started to see many more HR people either in transition or worried that their jobs were going to go away, I started to offer HR coaching. And that's kind of what brought us here today. So put the next slide up. So you'll be muted. If you want to either make a comment or say something, you can certainly raise your hand. If I don't get to you right away, I will try to get to you as soon as I can. If it's not like relevant to what I'm talking about, I may just you know, delay it for a bit, but I'll try to get to as many questions, live questions as possible. You can also, you will get unmuted if you're going to speak. I am going to have a conversation with Barbara Swenson at some point this morning about her experience as a coachee and also her experience being in transition. And then if you don't want to say something live, you can submit a question on the chat box, which for most people I think is at the bottom of the screen, depending on what device you're using, and you can just post something in there. Humor is welcome, just no profanity, and no bad jokes, only good jokes. So so try to keep it a little bit light this morning as well. So yeah, that's the process for the morning. So Linda, can you So we'll sort of start with, background, experience, and education. And so when I do coaching, I want to start off with getting to know the person's background, and not just their professional background. I want to know a little bit about their personal background too. Where are they in their life? Because that's really important, to not only for me to look at as a coach, but you to look at as a coachee or someone who's sort of thinking about things. Where are you in your life? Where are you with your, where are you in your career? Where are you in your sort of family? Do you have whatever grown kids that are, you're an empty nester, or you're sort of ready to, move on to the next part of your life, or, you're in the opposite stage and you're just getting started and you want to build a career in a certain direction. So that's kind of the assessment of background. Same thing with experience. Want to know a little bit, not only just about your professional experiences, but I would like to know more about your personal experiences, what you like to do, what kind of environment do you like to work in, what are the pros and cons of where you're at now, in your career, in your job. What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What are you afraid of? What are you excited about? And so those are all the kinds of things that I would want to explore with you. And then education, what kind of education do you have? What kind of education are you currently getting? What are you looking to do in the future, education-wise? We're sort of like, my philosophy is we should always be learning. And so whether or not we're getting a degree or not a degree, what are we doing to better ourselves? Either it's specifically in our career or just in general. How are we learning? So those are kind of the basics that I would be looking for. So yeah, you can go to the next. So resumes are interesting. I look at a lot of resumes. I will tell you that I think, and so I think I shared earlier that my strengths are strategy, sales, and marketing. And one of the things that I learned in sales training, and I do think it applies to candidates too, is that there's too much dependence on a resume. I think it's a piece of paper. Yes, it expresses your background, but it doesn't express you. Nothing expresses you better than you. And what I find is that everybody's so caught up in my resume, like, I got to get the right resume. It has to look perfect. What I learned in sales coaching is I used to send out my brochure, and my brochure was like my safety net. Like, oh, if I send my brochure out, then they'll know who I am and what I do. And my coach used to say to me, never lead with your brochure, never lead with your resume, lead with you. And so, I'm going to say a few things that might be different than what you've heard today, and that's okay. You can challenge me, you can discuss it, you can talk about it, whatever. But 90% of the jobs that you're going to find through relationship building and networking. They're not going to be found through job boards. Now, half of you probably have found a job through a job boards or more, but I'm not saying you can't do that. But what I find is the biggest challenge that candidates face in today's market is they rely on whatever, LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever, to find a job. And it's always about, I'm seeing more jobs, I'm seeing less jobs. That's, to me, a very small percentage of the available opportunities in the marketplace. The majority of available opportunities are found through networking and relationships and referrals, and those don't depend on a resume. They depend on your ability to communicate and reach out to people and express yourself about who you are, what you're looking for, and then you can always send a resume as a follow-up. But what we're taught again in sales training, and I would encourage you to think about, is resist the request from someone who you're talking with to send them your resume before you've had a chance to talk to them. So, and there are a lot of ways we can talk about how you do that, but basically you could just simply say, I'm happy to send you my resume, but I'd like to set up a short conversation with you before I do that. That way, there's no bias and there's no opportunity for them to rule you out, which is what happens because everybody's got ADD these days. So if they get your resume, they're going to look at it. And if they don't see exactly what they're looking for, they're going to toss it into the other pile, and you're never going to get a chance. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about bypassing recruiters and potentially and some things about that. What else do I want to say about resumes? I saw a question come up. How do I condense everything into 2 pages? Well, it's simple. I don't know. I've seen a lot of resumes, and I think even Barbara and I talked about this, and a couple other people I was working with, that it's pretty easy to eliminate a lot of stuff in your resume that's not necessary, particularly if your resume, again, is only a follow-up item. It's not the crux of your job search. So again, if you have thoughts on that or comments, or you want to raise your hand, I'm happy to stop while I'm presenting, and we can take some questions. So in the chat, again, somebody said, how do I put 30 years of experience into a 2-page resume? Well, you can and you can't. But again, I'd have to see the resume, and I'd have to hear about what your experience is. But if you put enough thought and effort into it, you can get a lot into possibly even a 1-page resume, let alone 2. My bio is 1 page, and I've been working for 40 years. I don't need a 2-page bio. And again, you got to de-emphasize the resume as being the most important part of your job search. So next. And Linda and Larry, you'll tell me if there's any hands up, right? Okay. So so now we're going to talk about, like, what are your career goals and plans? And I wanted to just mention, the importance of, what your vision is and what you're looking for. I can't tell you the number of people who undersell themselves, underrepresent themselves, undermarket themselves. And it's not just, some of it's about money, like we'll talk about salary and compensation stuff, but, a lot of it is just, I think it comes down to sort of self-esteem issues. Like, I'm not worth it. I'm not worth this job, or I'm not worth this level of experience, this level of responsibility. And what I find out is, if someone works on their self-esteem and they work on their self-worth, and they look at their resiliency, the conversation shifts, and the person starts to think more about what they really want to do. So, like, the question could be something like, if there were no holds barred on, you could find the ideal job or the ideal career, what would it be? And so I like to start there. I like to start with that, 10,000 foot, what do you really want to do? And if you're unhappy in your current situation, I think it's important to address it. And I have a coach that says to me, I'm only going to do work that makes my heart sing. And that may sound like kooky or whatever, or but like, I like it. I like what he says, because I often settle for work that doesn't make my heart sing. It doesn't make me feel good about who I am and what I'm doing. And I think we settle a lot, and I don't think we have to. I think it's a big world. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I know a lot of people who are in dream jobs, and a lot of it came down to them being assertive and resilient and had high self-esteem and self-worth. Again, if we were in a coaching situation, that's some of what we would be exploring, is what is your self-esteem and self-worth? And I'll get to that later. And how good do you feel about yourself? There's something called, I look like the world sort of broken into 2 ways of thinking, fear-based or victim-based consciousness. Poor me, I'm not going to be able to do it, blah, blah, blah. And then there's what they call authentic or abundance consciousness, which is, my dream job's out there. I know it is. I'm going to go for it. And nothing's going to stop me, basically. And if I need help getting there, I'm going to go for it. So, that's the kind of mindset. We've all been beat up to one extent or another over the years. You know, COVID hit my business very hard. But, you know, I could choose to just sort of like crawl up in a cave and say, oh my God, you know, but I'm choosing to stay positive and know that, you know, business is going to come back and I'm going to prepare for it and I'm going to be in a positive place when it comes. But those are choices that have more to do with your mental health and your attitude and things like that than they do with what your resume looks like or how many jobs you've applied for. So that's, yeah, those are my thoughts on, on career goals. You know, we would also explore things like geography and where do you want to work? What do you want to do specifically? What kind of job titles? What kind of, you know, areas are you interested in? I was talking to somebody yesterday who said they were, their job is supposed to be HR analytics and recruiting, but they're spending 75 or 80% of their time doing recruiting and not doing analytics. And their favorite thing to do is analytics. So we talked about how that shift could happen. Is it going to happen in the current situation? It might, but you got to like expect it or ask for it, but it may not, and you may need to move on. Because if that's really what you want to do and you're going to stay doing recruiting, which you don't want to do, that's not a healthy way to approach it. So, so those are kinds of important questions. Another area that's really important is networking. And I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring Barbara in. So Linda, I don't know if you can do that or get Barbara and I to have a conversation. Morning, Barbara. We get to see you too. So, oh, there she is. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Do I get to see you or no?
I don't know. Is that up to you or up to me?
Linda, you have to unmute yourself if you want to talk to her. Well, we'll put you on just voice conversation.
Yeah, we just, her camera's not coming up.
Okay. How are you, Barbara?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm good. Can you hear me? You just got muted.
Hold on. I'm getting her camera for you.
There she is.
Here she is.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great.
My favorite coachee.
Oh, that's very sweet.
So I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about when we started to have the conversation about using like your first degree connections and LinkedIn and sort of going like beyond the resume, sending the resume in for sort of jobs that are like posted, which you're still doing, but you also started having like these much deeper networking conversations. And you know, I know you joined a couple of associations and groups and then you pivoted away from one of them to another one. Can you just talk a little bit about what that was like for you and like, you know, how it worked and how it's working and were you resistant at first, that type of thing?
Sure. Do you want me to talk about getting here or just that specifically?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can touch on other things, but those were the main questions about, yeah.
So I relocated back to the area from Alaska. And so the greatest thing that I lost coming back from Alaska was my professional network. And so when I arrived back in New Jersey, I joined HRA of Southern New Jersey, and I agreed to volunteer and be their certification lead, which was great, very rewarding, met a lot of people. However, that group meets down in Vineland, and so it's really very, very Southern New Jersey. And I did get, when Scott mentioned referrals and relationships, that is so true, because I reached out to a professional colleague in HRA and said, you know, I need some help. When I relocated here, I really didn't expect to have COVID and all of these additional challenges finding a job. And so she referred me to Scott and his group. And in my very first meeting with Scott, he asked me those key questions about, who are you? What are you looking for? And Scott really helped to direct me to networking groups that are more closely tied to the greater Philadelphia area, which really broadened my sphere of influence, but also the people and companies available to me. And initially, I would say that I was very, not resistant, but a little bit bashful to be going out and meeting all of these other executives. But through the associations that Scott directed me to, they offer a lot of, everything is online now, but a lot of webinars and meet and greets. And it was very easy to meet other executives. And by joining appropriate organizations for me, it was much more comfortable because these folks also wanted to meet you to expand their network. So it's just been wonderful. I would say in the last 6 weeks of joining this one membership group in particular, I've met more than 50 people, and I have a great relationship with my sponsor and 2 other people who hopefully will help me to find that perfect job moving forward.
And do you think, like I made the comment that, like, well, 2 things. One, you pivoted not just because of geography, you pivoted because of your background being a combination of operations and HR. So I just I would want you to expand on that a little bit. And then the other thing was that you have you were applying for jobs, but maybe relying a little bit too much on, let's just say, the traditional job posting network, and not maybe digging in on how relationships could help lead you to the job of your dreams. Is that a fair statement or not?
That's absolutely fair. I was relying very heavily on Indeed and LinkedIn and applying for jobs, and then, kind of praying that somebody would follow up with me. And where Scott really helped me was in utilizing LinkedIn and all of its tools instead of just looking for jobs. So I went on LinkedIn and really looked at other alumni from the university I graduated from and reaching out to them. And just Scott really helped me with gaining comfort with informational interviews and just talking to people, not asking them to help me find a job, but just talking to them about, I relocated back to the area. What suggestions do you have? What do you do? What does your company do? Here's the things that I do, and are there any organizations that you could recommend for me where I could meet people and network? And so that has been a great journey for me. That is definitely not something I would have thought of on my own. And what I realized with Scott was that where I was focusing most of my time with that association in Southern New Jersey was great. I mean, it was great to be contributing and giving back, and I was meeting people, but it really wasn't aligning with my experience and the type of positions that I'm looking for. So it's really key to work with someone like Scott to understand who you are and what you want, and then make sure that you position yourself in a group of people who are like-minded. So that's been very helpful for me.
Thanks, Barbara. One of the things that we worked on, Barbara and I, is Barbara is a very outgoing and extroverted personality, and she's very, it's a great gift. However, when you're in, right? I'm more of an introvert. So, but when you're, when you're in a situation where you have a limited amount of time to convey your experience, you've got to get what they call that elevator pitch down. You have to be able in a minute to, to say, hi, I'm Barbara Swenson. I have an operations and HR background. I've been an executive director of a nonprofit. You know, I work in the hospitality industry. You know, I bring 30 years of experience, blah, blah, blah. But again, that has to happen in 1 minute. One of the things I do with my coachees is I time them. And I found sometimes that they will talk for 4, 5, or even 6 minutes without taking a breath and stopping in an answer to one question. That is not a recipe for success. And even though Barbara has a lot to say, you can't do that. You have to be, you have to cue into the, and a lot of it's because of nerves, and you want to get what your point across. But we did some role playing, Barbara and I, and you know, I would say there was a little bit of resistance to some of our role playing. I actually had her like get up and walk out into the door and, you know, come sit down for the interview. And, you know, it was a little weird, but we did it. But like, how would you comment on that, Barbara? Like the work to sort of like consolidate your pitch, if you will, and how to listen to the person who's interviewing you in terms of when to stop and when to let them ask, and back and forth.
Yeah, that was it was definitely a challenge for me to take my 20-minute story and get it down to 1 minute or 90 seconds. And being able to role play with Scott, with someone that you trust and you're comfortable with, was really helpful. I'm very open to constructive feedback. And, you know, Scott made some really good points. So he would point out, you know, okay, that was a great story. There was a lot in there. But what are the key things that you want to convey? And so Scott really helped me with things that seem very simple. You know, once Scott says it, that I didn't think of, like you should mention the large corporations that you worked for. You should mention the type of positions you've held. And you should mention how your experience applies directly to the position you're applying for, so that you really do a good job of selling yourself and helping the interviewer understand how you fit so well into what they're looking for. But yeah, it was very challenging for me. But I would say after the first role play, I got very comfortable with it and started to get better. But you do have to do the homework. I love homework. Not everybody does, but if you follow Scott's plan and his action items, it will help you get where you need to be.
Thanks, Barbara. One other area that we talked about was how to use LinkedIn more effectively. And I think LinkedIn is a very, very powerful tool. I'm not so sure that it's used properly by most people, either for as a candidate or even as a employer or even as a recruiter. I know that I have a lot to learn. I only use a small percentage of the capabilities, but one thing that I suggested to Barbara and I suggest to other people, and I'll go more to a conversation I had yesterday with a woman. I said, how many first degree connections do you have on LinkedIn? And she said 500. I have 10,000, by the way. But that doesn't mean a whole lot, by the way. What a first degree connection means is somebody has agreed, you know, to communicate with you at some level. It doesn't mean you're best friends. It doesn't mean they'll take your call. It doesn't really mean much. And I get hit on all the time with, you know, I see you're connected to so-and-so. Can you make an introduction? I'd say 95% of the time my answer is no. And I don't say that out of like, you know, I'm not trying to be mean about it. I just don't know the person well enough to make an introduction, and I'm not going to do that. But when you think about your first degree LinkedIn connections, how many of those people will actually take a call from you if you reached out to them? Her answer was about 30 out of 500. She said about 30 people would probably pick up the call or would be willing to schedule. My suggestion to her was that she needs to reach out to those 30 people and have it what they call an informational interview with them, which is what Barbara and I have been talking about. You know, haven't talked to you for a while. It's great to catch up. Here's what's going on with me. You know, I'll use this woman. She's not on the call, I don't think, but you know, it was her interest is in data analytics. So, you know, not recruiting. So you don't want to call up all your recruiter buddies. You want to call up the people that are into data analytics and they have jobs in data analytics. And you're not You're not reaching out to them again, I want to be clear, to say, hey, do you got a job at your company for data analytics? That's not the purpose of the call. The purpose is to say, hey, I'm really interested in data analytics. I'm not doing it right now. This has got to be a confidential call. I really want to hear from you about your job, how you got there, why you like it. Do you like it? Is it a good field? Is it growing? And then at the end, you can say, hey, do you know anybody or any companies that might either have a need for an HR data analytics person? And then you go from there. And I'm almost assured if you have 10 or 15 of those conversations, 3 or 4 or 5 of them are going to give you a lead to go to another resource that will ultimately potentially get you to your job. And Barbara, do you want to comment on that? I mean, I know you're still in the search process, and I know, what's that been like for you in terms of,
Yeah, I initially, I think I reached out to, I don't know, 12 to 15 of my my contacts, my first level contacts, and 5 of them responded that they would be open to a conversation. 4 of them actually had the conversation with me, and I think what I really learned was, I think almost all of them assumed from the beginning that I wanted them to help me find a job. And so it's really important that you set that expectation from the beginning of the conversation, that you really just want to have a conversation with them and catch up and have a talk to you in a while. And what's going on with you? Here's what's going on with me. What are some of the things we have in common? And, here's what I'm looking for. Do you have any suggestions? But I think the art of the informational interview did take me some practice. So it's great to use your first level contacts on LinkedIn because they're your friends. So it makes you a little bit more comfortable. But that has been very, very helpful for me, and definitely also growing my contacts. I only had about 250 or so contacts. I'm now over 300, and trying to build that every single week, and especially those contacts that are in the greater Philadelphia area.
Cool. So I just want to mention a couple things. The lines are open either for chat or raising your hand. Don't be that bashful. I don't bite. And if I don't see any hands or questions, I'm going to call on you if I know you. So you might want to get ahead of the curve. The other thing is I am offering what I call complimentary coaching consultations. So if anything of what I'm saying here is of interest to you, or you're curious, I'm happy to have a one-on-one with you. It's usually 15 to 30 minutes. I'll go over your resume. I'll take a look at your situation. We'll talk a little bit. And no pressure, but if you think it's something that you could be interested in or make a commitment to, then we could talk about it. So there's a link at the end to be able to sign up for that consultation. And I just want to put that out there. Barbara, I really thank you for everything you said, and I'll send you some pictures from my fishing trip. And
Please do.
Huh?
Please do.
I will.
Yep.
Is
Take
there
lots
anything?
of bug spray.
I will. Okay. Well, thank you, Barbara. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, so we'll move on to the next. We'll move on. I see a question though from an old friend, Christiane. Would you be willing to talk with me a bit? Unmute yourself, or have Linda. Christiane Dye it is, Linda. Hi. How are you? Linda's gonna unmute you, I think. So.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Are you getting a lot of feedback?
Just that your voice is very low, so you might need to get closer to the microphone, or you might need to raise the volume on the microphone.
No, I'm told that all the time on Zoom, and I actually have a puck is what I call it, and unfortunately I don't have it with me.
That's better though, that's much better. How are you?
Great, how have you been?
Good. It's been a while.
Yes.
What are you up to? Fill us in. Fill me in. What are you doing these days?
Right now, I'm still actively interviewing. I think a lot of people are concerned that there's not opportunities out there, and there are plenty of opportunities. It's just, again, finding them and driving them. Some companies are still hesitant to hire, but they're starting to open up and think about the future and what they're going to need to do to compete next year. Um, so right now, I'm actually going for a contracting role, and my question really was around contracting rates. It's been quite some time since I've contracted, and
Yep.
I've done some onesie, twosie things, and when I do training, it's a much higher rate. Um, but when I did RPO management and I managed a ton of people virtually across the United States, I was at around 90 an hour, and now I'm kind of going for an $80 an hour. And I'm afraid about conversion in the future because, often we think that contract rate is, higher than what you would normally be making. And in my case, it's kind of similar. So I'm really concerned about that conversion in the future. And the reason why I'm thinking about that is because that's how I've gotten almost all of my opportunities is through contract conversion.
Right. So you've gone like temp to perm or contract to hire or whatever they call it, right? That's been successful for you.
I've gotten offers at every single company that I've.
That's great, first of all. And yeah, I mean, I do a lot of contract to hire work with candidates, and a lot of my candidates have been converted to full-time regular employees of their companies. And so I get that. Yeah, the rate thing can get tricky, right? Because if you want to maintain your level of compensation, right, you want it to sort of follow you through the process from contract to direct hire, right? So, and when you say 80 and 90 an hour, my math skills aren't great, but like I always like double the rate and say, well, an 80 an hour person is a 160K level person. $90 an hour is an 180K. Now again, you got to factor in benefits and time off and other things. You get a lot of goodies in a direct hire situation that you don't get in a contract situation, right? Like, so a lot of contracts you're just hourly and they're just paying you that. But when they convert you, they'll say to you, okay, we're going to give you, let's just say in your case, let's say you went in at 80 an hour. They might offer you a job at 160 with benefits and all the other things. How would that feel to you? Like, would that feel fair, or do you feel like that you'd be sort of taking a step backwards in your mind?
Yeah, I think it would be fair. I'm just concerned at them coming back and saying, well, we think it should be lower
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually I don't see lower. And I actually, in my case, if I have a contractor who they want to hire, I will consult both with the contractor and the client and try to quote unquote make a win-win out of it so that the client and the contractor work together. If you're going direct, you're going to have to do that negotiation yourself, right? Like with the employer. But I guess my answer is it's not a simple yes or no or whatever. I think one, you have to go in. Like it's tricky because a lot of clients don't want to talk about contract to hire in the beginning. Like they want to say, you look, Christy, I need you to come in and help us do X. Yeah, maybe if it works out, we'll hire you. But so you got to read the tea leaves here. You got to like figure out, are they open to a temp to perm conversation now? And if they are, then compensation becomes really relevant at that point. Because say, well, this is, and you may need to get into that early on with them and talk about this is what I was making, or this was the range that I'm looking for. Is that possible? And then you've got a decision to make because they might come back and say, this is the best we can do, or this is our budget or whatever. And then you're going to have to decide if you're willing to take that risk or not, that they're going to, at least honor what they're paying you as a minimum. But then you could still negotiate. The other thing too, is if you go in and you do what you do, and I know you're a good, solid HR professional, your value goes up. You don't want to go in like, obviously you wouldn't take it at 40 or 50 or 60 an hour, right? Because then you're put yourself at a real disadvantage. But if you're in the ballpark, an 80 to 90 an hour to me is in the ballpark of kind of like there's not that huge a difference to be if you took it at 80. And then your value though can only go up from there because you're going to do a great job. They're going to love you. And then when it comes to negotiate the salary, you're going to say, yeah, I came in at a low rate. And you can even say that, if you guys want me, I need X. You know what I mean? So I think your negotiating situation is pretty good from what you're describing. If there was a big delta and you were taking jobs at 40 or 50 an hour, like then you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage. But 80, 90, $10 either way, I don't think you're putting yourself at a big disadvantage in my opinion.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback, and that helps a lot, especially when I look at this company. For the last 2 years, they've had multiple openings. So I know that they're going to have multiple openings in the future. So I think that now makes me feel a little bit more, I guess, settled about going back into contract, because I was very specific with me not going into contract work. And now I'm, of course, flipping that with the current environment and
That's
situation.
okay. Yeah. And if you want help, if you want to just kick it around some more offline, follow up with me. I'm happy to talk to you more about it. If you want me to include you in our pipeline for contract work, I'm happy to do that as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome, Christy. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for participating. Any other chats, hands, jokes? Okay. Oh, Nadine. Yeah. Come on in. Linda will get you set up. Linda, can you get Nadine Flexer in? Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
I hope you don't see me because I'm still in my pajamas, quite honestly.
Oh, then we won't. We
Okay.
won't disturb your
Yeah,
casual.
I was making dinner earlier this morning.
You're making dinner this morning. All right, I'm not even going to
Yeah.
go there, but like, okay.
My question is, I have recently sort of retired, but not sure that that's really what I want to do.
Right.
And just to let everybody know, I hired my replacement, and then COVID happened, and she hadn't started yet, but my company still elected, the company I was working for still elected to have her come on. So I guess they're to reinforce that there is opportunity, even
Right.
during COVID, for people. But so I've kind of committed myself to having the summer off, even prior to COVID, because I haven't really ever taken any time off. As a matter of fact, I started to work for somebody for you 3 days after I left my job that I was at for 20 years. But I may want to go back to work in the fall, but only on a part-time basis.
Yeah.
So what suggestions do you have, or, how would the process be different, if at all, if I were just looking for something that was strictly part-time?
Yeah. So again, I think thanks, Nadine, even more so than a full-time job, part-time jobs are more difficult to find. They're not as prevalent as full-time, and that's a cultural whatever thing. I think it might be loosening up a little bit with now the acceptance of remote working, and flexible schedules, and sort of trust levels building up that people can be productive. I think the mindset always with part-time is, well, if you're part-time, you've got other priorities besides this job. And, whatever, we could list them. You're taking care of kids, or you've decided you want to travel, whatever. So I think a lot of employers have felt that part-time is not a viable situation to set up. I actually find it to be the opposite. I find people that are working part-time often almost are working full-time, if you understand what I'm saying. They're responsible, they're doing what they need to do. That being said, it is It's going to take more work. I mean, you're not going to see that many part-time jobs advertised. So it kind of goes back to what I said before in my conversation about, a huge majority of the jobs are found through networking and through relationship building and through referrals. And so if you follow that line of thinking, you're going to have much more effective conversations with people, and you're going to put it out right up front. Hey, I'm only interested in working part-time, but I feel that I can give you a really solid result for what you might be looking for, once you know what the job is and what they're asking for. Like, you can have that kind of negotiation that you can't really have if you're applying just for any old job, because first of all, you're not going to find that many part-time jobs advertised. So your best shot, in my opinion, is going to be through networking, through relationship building, through using your relationships. And again, I know a lot of people that have worked part-time. I mean, first question I would ask you, Nadine, is would your current company take you back part-time? And is that a possibility? The other option is you could string together a couple of consulting or contract positions that could added up be part-time. Maybe they're both quarter time and they add up to a part-time. So, there's a lot of creative ways that you could think about this. Again, if I were coaching you, I would explore that all with you, and we would just sort of really kind of figure out a way for you to get what you're looking for. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yep.
I did want to ask you one other question. You used an expression that intrigued me, but I didn't get it all. And that had to do with earlier on when you spoke about, having a job that's your, so to speak, dream job, or something that really makes you feel good and it's a place you want to be. I mean, working is because it fulfills me. It's something I want to do.
Yeah.
So you used an expression, authentic something consciousness, but I missed the middle word. It caught my attention.
Yeah. So what I was describing was there's a difference between authentic and abundance consciousness and what I would describe as victim or fear consciousness. And authentic and abundance consciousness allows you to find work that makes your heart sing. Because if you're in authentic or abundance consciousness, you're aligned with energies like joy and gratitude and love and serenity and abundance and ambition and what I would describe as higher frequency emotions. When you're in victim consciousness or fear consciousness, you're in anger, fear, sadness, revenge, retaliation, resentment. Those are what are called victim consciousness. They do not serve one well in interacting with the world, either on a personal or professional basis. Yet most people are in victim consciousness. And I've been there, and I continue to go in and out of it. I'm working on being in authentic abundance consciousness. Most people rest in victim consciousness because that's our culture. It's a fear-based culture. And most people are afraid to face their fears. Just putting it out there, my opinion, but that's what I see. So is that helpful?
That's helpful, because I'm all about going for the other side.
Well,
I'm on the short end of the stick. I want to stay on the other side.
Yeah, and I love working with people who are into abundance or authentic consciousness, because the reality is, unless somebody's willing to move out of victim consciousness, I can't help them, and nobody else can either. The only person that can help someone move out of victim consciousness is the person themselves, and unless they're ready to do so, they're not going to do it. And so it would be a waste of my time and anybody else's time to try and work with somebody who's stuck in victim consciousness if they're not willing to get out of victim consciousness. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Nadine. Anything else?
Nope, that's great.
All right, cool. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to just if there's any other questions that are coming up, I'm happy to answer them. I'm going to just talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial. So when I say entrepreneurship, the classic people think, okay, you're interested in starting a business or buying a franchise or whatever. That's like the one extreme. But entrepreneurship is a continuum. So there's a word called entrepreneurship, I-N, and I-N-T-R-A, I think. And what it means is that, again, it goes back to that you're willing to take some level of risk to further yourself along on the road to independence and joy and manifestation of your wildest dreams. And so again, if you're interested in being either an entrepreneur, which very few people are, but you're interested in taking more risk, that's abundance. That's more of like, hey, I'm willing to put myself out there and take some risk. There are a lot of options out there for you, whether you decide to work for the same company or work for another company or go out on your own. It's not black and white. It's all on a continuum. So, you know, I mean, I left 25 years ago, corporate America. My ex-wife was not really happy about it at all. She said, you know, you've got a steady job. You're working at GE. I don't know why you would leave for something that's completely unknown. Well, the answer for me is part of it was I wanted more. I wanted something. I was tired of corporate America. I was tired of what I described as mediocrity. I was tired of just doing the same old, same old. I was tired of going along to get along. I was tired of bureaucracy. And so that was my motivation to leave. But, you know, you don't have to leave your corporate job to start a business. You can leave your job to find another job where you don't have the same kinds of whatever restrictions that you might have in your current job. But again, you have to have some level of entrepreneurial spirit to make those changes. Change is hard. Change is hard. It's hard for all of us. None of us really want to change unless we have to. The reality is we are being forced to change whether we like it or not. And unfortunately, most people wait till they lose their job because either their company lays them off or whatever before they decide to change. My recommendation is you do not wait to lose your job, particularly if you're not happy, to find something new. Get ahead of that curve. Get out in front of it. But again, that requires abundance consciousness, not fear-based consciousness. So that's what I have on entrepreneurship. If anybody has any comments or questions, I'm open. And then the last section is stress management. Things like, well, there's a lot here, and we talked about some of it. But you know what I'm talking about is resilience. I'm talking about what I talked about before is having a positive attitude about yourself and your life. Because if you don't, it's going to come across. If you go looking for a job and you're not in a good place, you're not in a resilient place, you're not in a positive place, it's going to come across in the interview. It's going to come across in your presentation. It's not going to, you know, it's not going to be hidden. Even if you think you are hiding it, you're really not hiding. And so we would talk again, if we were in a coaching situation, about, are you getting enough rest? Are you eating well? Are you exercising? What are you doing for your mental health? How are you staying positive? You know, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Because all those personal things allow one to be more effective in the corporate world or in a career situation. So again, that's an area that, you know, I delve into in my coaching situations. You know, I've talked to, when I was working with Barbara, you know, we had that conversation, you know, about that. The other thing, like, I find a lot of people, like, they sort of fall into the workaholic mode of career search, where it's, oh, I just got to find a job. I don't have time for anything else. I can't exercise. I can't sleep. I can't eat well. Well, guess what? You know, you're sabotaging yourself. You know, I would rather see you slow down and get healthier, mind, body, and spirit, and then you'll be more effective in your job search. So if you're sort of running, that's not healthy. The other extreme is you're in like frozen mode. You can't even get out of your seat and start to do this work. Well, you know, that's also a symptom of, you know, that things like exercise and nutrition and sleep can help you get more motivated to get out there and start the work. And, you know, like, look, there's pros and cons. Like, if you're in transition already, you have a lot of time, but you have to use that time effectively to find your next opportunity. So really looking for a job is a job. And if you're in transition, you've got to follow the right mindset to do that. If you're working, it can be even more challenging because then you're trying to work and find a job, keep your current job because you don't, it's still a more powerful position to be in a job looking for a job than it is to be out of a job looking for a job. So I just caution anybody who's working who wants to leave their current employer at some point to really, really focus on the importance of maintaining that job and then going out, confidentially and finding your next dream job. So, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm going to kind of wrap up and wind up. I mean, I'm open to any other questions or conversations that people might have about the job search process. I just want to thank Barbara. I want to thank Linda and Larry for helping me set this up. I want to thank all you guys for sort of sitting in and listening. I'm happy to follow up with anybody. Like I said, I'm offering a complimentary consultation. I'm happy to sit down with you for 15 to 30 minutes or so and just look over your resume and reflect on what we talked about today and just see, where you're at. And if it's something that you think you might want to do, on the screen is my email and my phone number. I am going to be leaving on Friday for vacation, so but I will be happy to follow up with you when I get back or schedule something before I leave. Just like have a great day and have a great career, and I hope everybody's able to manifest everything that they dream of personally and professionally. So that is pretty much all I got for today. So so I think there might be something. So a couple thank yous and stuff. So appreciate your attention. It's great to have everybody, and hopefully I'll see you soon. All right, take care.